Hello, welcome to our Saturday reflection, and the reading is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, beginning at verse 12. Now during those days he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer with God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose 12 of them, whom he also named apostles: Simon, whom he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, and James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas, and James son of Alphaeus, and Simon who was called the Zealot, and Judas son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became the traitor. He came down with them and stood on a level place, with a great crowd of his disciples, and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases, and those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out from him and healed all of them. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you, on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe, you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." This is the word of the Lord. Imagine a school coach selecting his football team. 11 players are selected, and they know about football, they know the rules. They all start working together, but this is different. They have a serious game to play against some difficult opponents. Several games, in fact. But stepping up to a higher division is quite different. The game changes the further up the leagues they go. Okay, the basic rules are the same, but the game is different. It's no good the coach lecturing them for hours about the differences they will meet. They need 3 or 4 basic facts to remember to do, or 3 or 4 things to remember not to do. These basic guidelines will be remembered in the heat and excitement of the game. It will keep them focused on the game and not struggling to remember stuff they had forgotten because of information overload. Jesus had picked his team, the apostles. They didn't have football teams in his day, and to be honest, this was far more important than football, although I do know some people who may disagree with me on that point. The apostles were Jews who had a long tradition going back to the 12 tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob, and God made them his special people. But this didn't work very well, as they squabbled and forgot to follow God as was intended. Then Jesus came into the playground. All sorts of people were trying different ways of being God's people. Some with new rules to obey, some with new schemes for violent revolution, some supporting Herod and his regime, some with proposals for withdrawing into the desert, and no doubt many more schemes as well. Jesus picked 12, his Israel team. He gives them clear orders on how they should work, 4 blessings and 4 warnings, which were easy to understand. If we go back to the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, there were long lists of do's and don'ts, but this is a new time of Jesus, a man for all, who, while keeping the rules, brings clear orders on the important rules to work by. Jesus gives the apostles his version of the same rules, but simpler. It's also radical and something new. This time the good news and focus is on people who haven't had anything for a long time. The poor, the hungry, those who weep, those who are hated. This is to overturn the injustice in this world. In this time of pandemic, we have many rules. Social isolation. Can we meet one person in the park, but it can't be grandma? We can go back to work as long as we observe social distancing, but not on public transport, unless we have to. We can now go to the garden centre, the tip, and move house, but not visit our brother in a separate house. Rules that are confusing, not only to us, but also the authorities trying to keep us safe. Listening to a GP on the TV this week, she explained the rationale behind not visiting grandma for a cuppa in her own garden. It would be difficult to contain young children if they saw her sat across the lawn, and the temptation for a hug on both sides would be overpowering. Explained like this, the rule is a bit more understandable. People are confused about rules, and it was like this for the people in Jesus' time. So many rules that can be perceived in different ways. Jesus set out the simple version behind his ministry and teaching. Basic rules that we should all abide to. It will make for a fairer, more just society. Rules that work with the poor, the hungry, the distressed and the persecuted. Sometimes these rules will upset people and provoke opposition from those who like the status quo. Today we have people intent on breaking the rules to combat the virus, but there are many more people keeping to the rules and hoping for a better future once this is all over. Jesus also gave warnings about saying that we shouldn't put too much emphasis on everything we have and let them become the reason for our lives. We should share what we have with those who haven't. The response from the community to the food collections this week at Holy Trinity, St Elizabeth's and St Catherine's churches was amazing. The generosity and love that went with the food to families who are really struggling is very humbling. We will be collecting again on the 26th of May. Details on our newsletter and on the church Facebook pages. When Jesus comes into our playground and picks us for his team, we should take heed of the blessings and the warnings. It's up to each individual to answer his call for themselves. As Christians, we believe that the call of the 12 and the sharp-edged teaching is still valid today. We work to a set of rules that will turn society upside down. Or should that be the right way up? Amen.